Good afternoon, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to another afternoon of Victorian poetry. So we've been talking over the course of the last couple of poets about these kind of groups of eminent creative Victorians who all hung out together and knew each other and generally worked on similar projects at similar times. And today we are getting our first introduction to one of the biggies in terms of groups of Victorian creatives, I suppose, and that is the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. And we've got one of the founder members today. That's Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and he formed the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood with a group of fellow painters. So he did it with William Holman Hunt and John Everett Malleus, but he also came to be connected over time to William Morris. He also lived for a while with George Meredith and Swinburne, who is another poet, who are both other poets in this book. So we were going to be doing George Meredith today, actually, but there is no short poem by him, so I didn't want to do a repeat of yesterday where I read a section of a longer poem, so I had to skip him. And generally was part of quite a renowned group who were all about, well, it's kind of hard to define what they were all about. They liked kind of chivalric images, they liked Christian symbolism, they liked return to more kind of hands-on crafty things, kind of moving towards the kind of arts and crafts type approach to things. It says here, the group was not a very coherent one, and I think that's fairly accurate. And yeah, in terms of the poem that we've got for today, I did have some doubts as to whether I wanted to read this out, because we've had Victorian philosophical poems, we've had Victorian nature poems, we've had Victorian romantic sentimental poems, but today we've got a Victorian erotic poem, I think. Yeah, so I'm going to give it a go at reading it out, and yeah, it feels a little bit incongruous. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to read the introduction describing it and a little incident that occurred in the life of this poem, which I think was quite amusing. So, the poem is called Nuptial Sleep. At length their long kiss severed with sweet smart, and as the last slow sudden drops are shed from sparkling eaves when all the storms has fled, so singly flagged the pulses of each heart, their bosoms sundered, with the opening start of married flowers to either side outspread from the knit stem, yet still their mouths burnt red fawned on each other where they lay apart. Sleep sank them lower than the tide of dreams, and their dreams watched them sink and slid away. Slowly their souls swam up again, through gleams of watered light and dull drowned waifs of day, till from some wonder of new woods and streams he woke, and wandered more, for there she lay. Well, what do you make of that? I will tell you what Victorians of the time made of that by reading you the introduction now. A sonnet from the first part of Rossetti's The House of Life, published in 1870, Nuptial Sleep was the especial target of Robert Buchanan's The Fleshly School of Poetry article in the Contemporary Review, 1871. Here is a full-grown man, presumably intelligent and cultivated, putting on record for other full-grown men to read the most secret mysteries of sexual connection, and that with so sickening a desire to reproduce the sensual mood, so careful a choice of epithet to convey mere animal sensations, that we merely shudder at the shameless nakedness. We are no purists in such matters. We hold the sensual part of our nature to be as holy as the spiritual or intellectual part, and we believe that such things must find their equivalent in all, but it is neither poetic, nor manly, nor even human to obtrude such things as the themes of whole poems. It is simply nasty. Rossetti, much affected by the fleshly school controversy, excluded this nasty poem from the final version of The House of Life in 1881. As Buchanan, published under the name of Thomas Maitland, recognised, the poem's distinctiveness lies in its making public the private, its foregrounding of sexual experience as an appropriate subject for poetry. Its gesture towards legitimization is the nuptial of the title, redefining the accepted terrain of the sonnet, long associated with ideal and idealized love, Rossetti's poem was remarkable not least for its inscription of female sexual desire. At the close of nuptial sleep, the woman occupies the culturally familiar female position as the object of a man's erotic gaze. But prior to that, Rossetti writes her as an equal, as inseparable from her partner in desire and sexual action. The final line's emphasis on the wondrous fact of the woman's body might be compared to some other poems in the book, with its rather different valorization of material existence and real presence. So yeah, it didn't go down particularly well at the time, but there's something else interesting and a little bit controversial about this poem and some of the other poems that were in Rossetti's 1870 collection. So you may know that the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, they did a lot of paintings of women with red hair, and one of their favourite women with red hair to paint was Lizzie Siddal, and this is a painting that was done by Rossetti of this woman, Lizzie, when he was getting married to her. So Lizzie became his wife in 1860, but died, it says here, probably by her own choice from an overdose of laudanum in 1862. I'll just read it. Rossetti, in a self-defeating gesture to a departed muse, had some of his poems in manuscript buried in her coffin in Highgate Cemetery. He started... By 1869, he was seriously regretting the loss of his poems in Lizzie's coffin and arranged for them to be recovered in the most macabre incident in the history of Victorian poetry. He did not attend the exhumation, but was able to bring out the volume poems in 1870. How fantastic is that? Like, the melodramatic action of burying your poems with the woman that you love, and then the complete about turn and digging them up, like 7 years later. Like, how grim and grisly can you get? It's a proper Halloween story. And just the idea that one of the poems that he got people to dig down and pull out was this poem about, you know, presumably a very intimate experience with the woman whose corpse he's just desecrated. It's totally bizarre, and kind of fun. It reminds me a little bit of I want to say it's Robert Louis Stevenson who had like a short story about people going out and like grave robbing for bodies for anatomy lessons. Body snatchers or something like that, but like this is poem snatching from the grave, just totally fantastic. Like, you couldn't make it up, or potentially you could if you were trying to like create a more controversial persona for yourself. I guess it bears saying as well, when we're talking about like slightly gruesome and dramatic things that happened, that Rossetti's mum was Frances Polidori. So she was, it says here, sister of Byron's doctor, but Polidori himself was the author of The Vampire, and you feel like that kind of monstrous demons of the night thing possibly had a little bit too much influence on Rossetti at this stage. Yeah, in terms of getting to the poem itself, I don't really want to analyse it too much. What I do want to say is that it's interesting that they kind of talk about it like it's something completely new and unusual to be to talk about sensual things in a sonnet. I don't think that sonnets are normally this explicit, and I don't think it takes a lot of reading to see some quite graphic sensual imagery in this poem. But it doesn't take a lot of reading to see that in some of Shakespeare's sonnets as well. Like, it doesn't generally take a lot of reading to see suggestiveness in a lot of poetry, to be honest. John Donne definitely has got some poems that you can read as quite explicit, I would say. This idea of intimacy and nakedness and bodies close together, that I don't think that's new. I think Buchanan is being a little bit unfair in saying that Rossetti's the first person to use this kind of nasty technique in poetry. It's definitely not a poem that I would want to memorise. It's not really a poem that I would want to study, but I don't see that there's anything wrong with it. I think maybe Buchanan was just a bit of a Victorian prude. But then he does argue that he's he says he is no purist in such matters. Yeah, should we talk about the poem as a poem? It is very definitely a sonnet. So it's got a rhyming scheme that's A, B, B, A, B, B, A, CD, 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 if that makes sense. It's 14 lines. If you count the syllables in each line, it abides by the normal da-dum, 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 but not too rigidly. There's lines where it definitely adapts that, and I quite like that. It's a flexible approach to obeying the rules of the form. Slowly their souls swam up again, as opposed to slowly their souls swam up again. You get this sense of a change in direction when you go from them sinking and sliding into sleep to slowly swimming up again. So the change in the rhythm fits really well with that change in the action of the poem. Yeah, you feel like it is written with affection, I suppose, and this slightly cutesy sense at the end where the guy's like, oh, it's amazing, she's not a dream, she's really here. He woke and wondered more, for there she lay. I think that's maybe a little bit over the top, but I think he's trying to convey that there is some kind of enduring affection between the couple. It's not just purely a sensual thing. And obviously he, like it says, he's tried to kind of justify it by explicitly trying to make it clear that it's a marriage bed rather than being a kind of any kind of affair. But yeah, you can see why he might have been nervous about publishing this poem and being quite ready to withdraw it in the face of criticism. I would say it's probably daring for the time period because, you know, the Victorians are known for being a little bit formal when it comes to these things. But yeah, I'm going to read it one more time and then I'm going to leave it there. I really had my doubts about whether I wanted to read this one, but then I was like, you know, it's the rules. I said I'd read the first short poem by each poet, so I was thinking of skipping ahead to Song 8, The Wood Spurge, which is just like a kind of like a nature poem. It's quite nice. But then I was like, no, it's going to be far more entertaining if you read about Victorian sex. Anyway, so I hope you've been amused by it because I have found it amusing as much as I see it as, yeah, like you could take it as a serious poem, but sometimes it's easier not to, I don't know. At length, their long kiss severed with sweet smart, and as the last slow sudden drops are shed from sparkling eaves when all the storm has fled, so singly flag the pulses of each heart. Their bosoms sundered, with the opening start of married flowers to either side outspread from the knit stem, yet still their mouths, burnt red, fawned on each other where they lay apart. Sleep sank them lower than the tide of dreams, and as their dreams watched them sink and slid away, slowly their souls swam up again through gleams of watered light and dull drowned waifs of day, till from some wonder of new woods and streams he woke and wondered more, for there she lay. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you haven't been too scandalised. I hope you're not going to be writing into the contemporary review of BookTube and saying that these things shouldn't be spoken of in public. Just that, the extremity of that response. It is neither poetic, nor manly, nor even human. Brilliant. Anyway, I hope you found that entertaining. Let me know in the comments what you think and, you know, whether you think Dante should go around publishing his private affairs and stealing things out of graves, or whether you think these are poems for private eyes only that should be left buried where they lay. Yeah, let me know what you think and take care. Hope you're enjoying Victober.